I don't think it's confusing. It's not really a page of Talmud, right? What you have, where you have a layout, tries to explain what the layout of the page looks like. But in the middle, it doesn't have real texts. These are explanations of what those texts are. Okay, so number one, of course, is in the middle, Mishnah. You see where that is? So we read yesterday. We know what the Mishnah is. Big book collected by Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Judah the Prince, he's called. Judah the Prince. Organized into 6 topics, 6 categories. And then we saw what is the Gemara. After that, number 2, on your page is the Gemara.
Rabbi, is the same, exactly the same in the Talmud? The layout?
You don't believe me at all.
No, I am asking.
Don't believe me.
I don't know how to read it, the Talmud.
Look, each page, in the middle you have, okay, I'll show you a page that has a Mishnah, and then here's this Gemara. It starts with Gemara. So Mishnah, Gemara. This is the end of the chapter. That's why it's the ending of the chapter. New chapter. Mishnah, Gemara. Turn to another page. Then, of course, you have on the inside Rashi, on the outside Tosfot, all the things in the margin, just like on your page.
Yes.
I'm just, it's trying to describe every page of Talmud. Not every page has a Mishnah, because it could be
What's the
that.
division of Mishnah and Gemara?
You tell me. What's the division? You mean on the page, or what's your question?
In the middle. In the middle. Where's the division?
Whatever. So basically, a Gemara, it's like an elaboration, explanation of the Mishnah. And when they're finished explaining, they've had all their discussions about one Mishnah. So then you get to another Mishnah. I'm looking for it now.
Well, why is there consistent spaces?
What do you mean spaces?
I don't know how to explain it.
What are you looking for? In between?
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's just to show you that there's different texts. These are different texts. The text in the middle is different than on the sides you have commentary. Let me just, okay, find you another Mishnah, for example. Where do we have one?
So when Mishnah and
when the Gemara on the first Mishnah ends, then another Mishnah is quoted, and then they start over again with the new Mishnah. Let me show you here. In the middle, you finished with the Gemara on the previous Mishnah. Then it says the big letters Mem Taf Nun stands for Matnitin, our Mishnah. And then there's like Mishnah's usually a few lines. And then it says again Gimel Mem, beginning of Gemara. Gemara on that Mishnah, and that continues for a while until you find another Mishnah. Let's see. Oh, that was the last one of the chapter. There's the beginning of the next chapter is a Mishnah, and then the Gemara. And then the Gemara continues for a while until they finish discussing it. And then they quote another Mishnah. Hello. Okay, Tov. Okay, Tov. The next Mishnah here is coming up. Here's another Mishnah. Okay, another Mishnah. See, it has a title. It says the Mishnah, 2 lines, and then a little Gemara. This one's actually very short. The Gemara on this Mishnah is just 5 lines. The other ones have been a few pages. It all depends on how long the discussion is on each Mishnah.
If you learn one page a day, you learn like the whole Gemara from one Mishnah.
Correct.
It's not confusing because if you do the next day.
It's confusing, but you get the hang of it. Sometimes the Gemara has many discussions that are not related directly to the Mishnah. It's arranged associatively. It's like when we have discussions in class. All of a sudden, we'll be talking about politics because there was a terrible terror incident. And then the next time we'll be talking about the weather because it's such a beautiful day outside. And then we'll go back to study the laws of Pesach. And someone will ask me a question about Purim's coming. What do I do? So we'll talk about many different things. The Gemara is just like that. It goes from topic to topic to topic, even though the general structure is the order of the Mishnah the Mishnah's categories. Correct? You have this page from yesterday. Whoever doesn't have the page can find it in the WhatsApp group. I sent a picture of it just to be sure. I don't think I have any more of those. Maybe I have one more. Let's see. Told you yesterday to bring it again today. I can come out. Do you have? Perfect. There you go. You have this? Yeah, you have this. Yeah, you have it on the WhatsApp. Okay. So we talked a little bit about the Mishnah and the Gemara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvarav.
Amen.
How are you, Binyamin?
I'm stressed.
Oh, something happened, or?
My phone don't work, my internet don't work,
Oh.
and nobody come to help me. They will say,
Oh.
If you need to know, we need
When you come to yeshiva, there's internet. Yes.
Hmm?
When you come to yeshiva, there's internet.
But he needs the phone to get it with.
Yeah,
His phone is not working either. Yechiel is back.
He's back.
Yechiel is back.
Oh, you saw him here?
I saw him on Zoom, and he'll be here today.
Okay.
He'll be here today. So he's going to help you out.
Yeah.
He's very good at that. Very good. Gabriel, good morning. How are you? Okay. Do you have the page from yesterday? The page of the outline, the layout of the Gemara page? So we saw that the Mishnah Gemara, when were they written? The Mishnah and the Gemara, it says on the page. When were they written? It's the fourth period. But what years do we have for that?
30 BC,
Right?
30 BC to 200 BC.
That's the Mishnah. Very good. 30 to 200. And I like to keep it round, so I say 0 to 200. And the Gemara? 200 to 500, right? What does it say on their page? Also 200 to 500. Okay. Then we decided to look yesterday at Rashi. Rashi appears on the inner margin. Here it's the right-hand side of the text. Rashi, we talked about him yesterday, he's from the 11th century. So how many years later is Rashi?
600 years.
600 after the Gemara, 800 after the Mishnah, yeah, 900. 900. From 200, 900 years later, Rashi, he wrote a commentary on the Mishnah. You think he's the only commentary on the Mishnah? No, the other commentaries on the Mishnah as well. But he became famous. Rabbi Shlomo. Yeah, that means his father's name was Yitzchak, right? Shlomo ben Yitzchak. Yitzchaki is the family name. So it's, right.
Is that born genius like?
I don't know. I must have been, but he has. We know who his rabbis were. He quotes them a number of times. He studied with this rabbi, Rabbi Yitzchak. He studied with Rabbeinu Gershom. There are a few rabbis who were his teachers, but nobody really before him wrote a commentary on almost the entire Talmud, and almost the entire Tanakh. And he had quite a way of being very succinct, very clear. Nowadays, you almost always read the Talmud with the commentary of Rashi. Rashi always helps you out. Whenever there's a difficult word, whenever there's a difficult turn of events, you ask yourself, what just happened here? You look in Rashi. Rashi will explain it to you. It's been how many years since Rashi?
So 900 years.
900 years. Wow. It was the central commentary for 900 years. Nowadays, there's somebody else who did a similar job. You can't compare, obviously. Rashi was from the period of the Rishonim. So every word that he says has a greater authority than anybody who comes later, like in the 20th century. Somebody else who tried to give a commentary on the entire Talmud and the entire Tanakh and the entire Mishnah, he just passed away. Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, personal rabbi of my children. I met him a number of times. Sweet man. Time magazine in America said he was a scholar of generations.
Did you finish all the commentaries?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, he had some students working with him at the end.
Is it the same in our library? Or those,
We have his commentary in the library in English, translated into English. Here you have the Chumash Steinsaltz, the Chumash, his commentary on the Chumash, right here, the red volume.
Why it's called Koran Talmud?
That's the printer. The printer's Koran, yeah.
Like a Siddur from
Yeah, the printers. Yeah, Jewish printers, very, very successful. In any case, Rabbi Steinsaltz also has a running commentary on the Talmud, maybe even more explicit than Rashi. With all due respect to Rashi, 900 years ago, there's a lot of information that we had to fill in. And another popular commentary, modern day commentary on the Talmud, it's known by the donor. The donor is J. Schottenstein. The Schottenstein Gemaras. It's put out by the Schottenstein. It's put out by the publishing house, not Koren, but Art Scroll. Okay. Yeah. There's a Chumash. There's also the Gemara. The Gemara. That's a commentary, a running commentary on the Talmud, from start to finish. It's amazing. They did a beautiful job. But that was a whole team. Rabbi Steinsaltz, one man. At the end, he got a team, helped him, and that's why it took him 30 years, maybe more, 40 years to finish. But Rashi, going back to Rashi, on every page of Talmud, even Rabbi Steinsaltz, he didn't take Rashi off of the page. Rashi and Tosfot, he didn't take them off the page, but he added in his running commentary in parallel to Rashi's. So you can look, if you're having trouble with the Talmud, you look in Rashi, and you can look in Rabbi Steinsaltz's commentary. Or, I call him Rabbi Art Scroll. That's not his name, it's just the name of the publisher. Okay? Rashi gave amazing commentary. That's why it's on the inside of every page. Why do I say inside? Because this layout was created by a Christian, Weinberg, who decided to print. He was a printer in the 16th century. The first printings of Jewish books were made by Christians. And he came up with this genius layout. I mean, he had Jewish people working for him, and they came up with this layout that the Gemara is in the center, and then we have all around it, on either side, we have commentaries from hundreds of years later. In one page, you've got a multi-generational layout, and you can see here that each page of Talmud is two sides. First side and the second side. This is considered one page. It's called a folio, right? It's side A and side B. In any case, on both side A and side B, Rashi is on the inside. Here, it's on the left-hand side of the page, and here, it's on the right-hand side of the page. The point is that it's always the one that's closest to the binding. That's why you say inside versus outside. So Rashi will sometimes be the left of the text, sometimes it'll be to the right of the text. Understand? Okay, so Rashi, what's on the other side of Rashi? Questions so far? Comments about the Talmud? Yes, Hananel.
No, which one should we go on?
You asked yesterday. You didn't understand the answer. We use all of them.
I want to study, right? But I don't understand this one.
Somebody who doesn't have experience, of course, can have tremendous use of a translation into English. And a modern day commentary is going to be easier to read than a 900-year-old commentary. Right? Rashi was 900 years after the Mishnah. We're 900 years after Rashi. We're definitely studying an ancient text. So the any help you can get is useful. Depends what volume you have. Ultimately, we try to read the Talmud as primary texts directly. Baruch Hashem, after many years of experience, I can open up any page of Talmud and try to read it and understand it. Usually I need some help from Rashi. sometimes even without Rashi. And the more you study, the more you get better at reading the discussions in the Gemara and the Mishnah. You have to have a lot of prior knowledge of the Tanakh, but little by little. So whatever text you have that can help you is great. It's like when you learn to ride a bike. Do you know how to ride a bike, Hananel?
Yeah.
Who taught you how to ride a bike?
Myself.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then did you? Sometimes they have for little children. What do they have on the bikes?
Like a tree.
Training wheels, they're called. Right? Training wheels. The little 3 wheels at the bike. Right. So that's how you start to learn. And then when you get a little bit older, they take off the training wheels. Then you really learn how to ride a bike. So maybe like a Steinsaltz commentary is like training wheels. Helps you at the beginning. But ultimately, you want to be able to study the Talmud. Any volume of Talmud like this. Open it up. Start learning the Talmud. And you have Rashi to help you, but this is like training wheels. I also have another example for you, which is not as nice. And that's for more advanced students. More advanced students, I say it's nice to have training wheels, but the equivalent is when you have a broken leg, you don't know how to walk, you use crutches. If you use crutches all the time, you're never going to learn how to walk on your own. You have to get off of those crutches. You have to take off the training wheels at some point. So don't get used to having the easy commentary spoon-fed to you. At the beginning, of course you should. Use any tool that you can to help you understand. When you study Talmud, I don't think you should be studying Talmud now. We're studying about the Talmud. Really, what I'm trying to teach you is the generation, the Jewish tradition, and how it goes throughout the generations. What are the different parts of it and the features of it? So let's move ahead to the other side, okay? Yeah.
I have a question. You said the original printed Talmud was printed by Christians. When and where?
Before that was,
did that happen?
where did it happen?
Why is it considered kosher? Because, for example, Torah scrolls,
You're right.
Manufactured only by Jews.
Yeah. Well, it's an aid for studying, but before that age, there was no printing press. People would copy over manuscripts. It was a job to copy manuscripts, and obviously printing is much cheaper, and it could aid people to study in a much wider form. But it's not ideal. We would love to have Jews printing it in Italy.
So Catholic. The printers are Catholic.
I'm not sure. I imagine so, but I'm not sure. I think in Italy, yeah. Yeah, there's a tremendous history of printing of Jewish books in many different places in Europe, and it's fascinating. A lot of it has to do with the business. People did this for a business. But for the Jewish people, it's very significant to have the books. What are we called? People of the book, right?
Yeah, but for example, when these books are printed, there's a Hashem's name, or the books have.
That's a good question. It's a good question.
Otherwise, it's handled by Christians. So they might
Right.
throw away some wasted pages.
It's true. It's true. They're definitely problematic. More problematic if you print the name of God in its original spelling. We try to avoid that because maybe it won't be treated with holiness. There's a mitzvah in the Torah that anything, the word of God, the name of God, has to be treated with special respect. You're not allowed to destroy it. The question came up, what about printed? You could say that when you write, when a scribe sits down and writes the name of God, it has holiness. But when a machine prints the ink on the paper, does that also have holiness? I'll just skip there's a long discussion, but the bottom line is, today, even if it's printed, if it has the name of God, we try to treat it with respect. Most of the Talmud doesn't have the name of God. The Chumashim do. Chumash, Psukim from the Torah, they print it with the Yud Kei Vav Kei, mostly. Some don't, but in the Talmud, it's rare that you'll have a name of God. They were careful about that. But anything that's printed for the sake of Judaism, for the sake of a religious practice of studying Torah has holiness to it. So we don't throw out these volumes. This volume of Talmud is never going to be thrown in the garbage, I hope. We bury it when it gets too old or too used. Nobody wants it anymore. It's out of use. We have to bury it. We don't treat it with disrespect, even though it doesn't probably have the name of God. But because it's a religious book printed for religious reasons, it does have a level of holiness. Yes?
If the name of God is written in the Christian book, what you have to do?
No holiness. If it's made by Christians, not in the name of our God, then if you have a heretic who believes in Avodah Zarah, but he prints a Tanakh, you can burn it. I don't think you should burn books, but you can. Halachically, it doesn't get the holiness unless it was printed with holy intentions.
Even
if it's handwritten and even if it's in Hebrew, yes.
So for example,
The intention makes a big difference.
On the Jerusalem March during Sukkot, a lot of Christians are waving banners, flags with Hashem's name, Yod Keh Vav Keh.
Wow. Yeah. Well,
probably after that they will throw the flags, banners in garbage.
Not so good.
It doesn't have holiness.
If they intended it to be the name of the one and only Yud Keh Vav Keh, the holy God of the Jews, maybe it does get holiness. Even if it was written by Christians. The point is if they intended it to be holy. But the truth is, most things, even if the person who wants it to be printed is thinking about holiness, the printer themselves, they're just making a buck. They're just printing it because they're getting money to go home and have a sandwich. So the intention of the printer makes a difference. The question, yeah, Eitan.
But the Christians have like the Tanakh and their book. But if you take their book out, is the Tanakh itself kosher?
Kosher, maybe you can use it if you have nothing else. It's not ideal. But I remember about 10 years ago, more, 15 years ago, I had a group of students from China, from the Kaifeng community. Descendants of, we know that there was a Jewish community for 1,000 years in Kaifeng. You were there. Amazing. I was not. But they came to me. They came to me, 7 boys. They studied with me in yeshiva like this. There was only one problem. They don't speak English or Hebrew. And I don't speak Chinese. Other than a few words, as you know. They taught me a few words. Yeah, exactly. So the best we could do, and there was no Jewish printing of Tanakh in Chinese. All there were Christian Bibles. So we took a Christian Bible and we ripped out the New Testament, and they had at least something that they could read.
It's not kosher.
It's not ideal.
Full of Hashem's name.
But it wasn't printed for Jewish purposes.
They don't put Hashem's name in the Christian Bible. They always say Lord. You
No,
never see
in Chinese translation, mostly it's Hashem's name.
That's not necessarily holy. That's not necessarily holy.
Only if you write in the Hebrew is holy.
Only if you write it as a Jew, with the intention that it should be the name of the Jewish God that you love and respect, then it has holiness. So those books probably, they were useful, but I don't think they had any holiness.
So in hindsight, Goyim can desecrate God's name and it's irrelevant to us. It's only if Jews write it for Jewish reasons.
Well, listen, anybody who desecrates holy things is a criminal. He's doing something offensive.
Yeah.
And right now we're talking about the laws of halakha, about the specific laws of holy objects. The wider context is you should definitely people should respect other people's religions, right?
Lots of people don't.
They don't. So that's a crime. That's what I'm saying. But I'm not. That's a different question of the rules of the holy writings. The Jewish holy writings. If a non-Jew wants to write the name of God in order to burn it, first of all, he's not Jewish, so he doesn't have the rules that I've been telling you about. The rules of keeping. We have to treat our holy names but it probably wasn't holy in the first place. He just put together a string of letters. That doesn't make it holy, right? If it has the intention is what is critical here.
But what the Nazis did, burning the synagogues with the Torah.
Terrible.
That was like
Terrible, of course, yeah. Yeah, one of the things when you have a fire, or a flood, the things you want to say first is the Sefer Torah, the Tefillin, the Mezuzot. They have the names of God written with the intention by a holy scribe who's creating the holy artifact on purpose. The name of do you know that somebody who writes the Sefer Torah goes to the mikvah because he's going to write the name of God every day before he starts his day work. He's going to write the name of God in the Sefer Torah. Or a mezuzah. He goes to the mikvah to make sure that he's holy enough. All right, back to our topic at hand. The Jewish Talmud. The standard layout has the Mishnah and the Gemara from period number 4. Ooh. I passed these around. I printed them bigger and I made a few corrections, changes. The chart that we used to understand the structure and the features of the Jewish tradition. So where do you find the Talmud? Who can point out the Talmud to me? Everybody point on your page to the Talmud. Point on your page. Let me show. Where are you pointing? At the bottom of the middle, right? What do we call it? Period number 4. 0 to 500, right? The Talmud consists of the Mishnah and the Gemara. Who wrote the Talmud? What do you call them? Look up. One row. Look up one row. We see Tanaim are the sages of the Mishnah, and the Amoraim are the sages of the Gemara. And the general term for them is Chazal. Chazal, the sages of blessed memory. Chachamim zichronam livracha. All right. So what's in the Talmud? Who can tell me what is the Talmud?
Mishnah and Gemara together.
What is the Mishnah and the Gemara?
Mishnah's
What is it? What is it? Oral law written down. You have it right there on top of this entire box is oral law written down. Written down in the Midrash. It's also written down in the Talmud. Okay, what's the difference in the Midrash and the Mishnah?
What's that?
So the difference between the Midrash and the Mishnah, or the Midrash and the Talmud, what's the difference between them? It's all here on the page.
Midrash is related
The Midrash is
Not related to.
organized by
Organized. It says it right here on your page. Organized by the books of the Tanakh. Whereas the Mishnah was organized by?
the Mishnah.
How was the Mishnah organized?
6
categories.
6 categories, 6 topics, right? Good. I think we're getting it. Then we said Rashi. Where did he live?
France,
And what time?
1100.
1100. He died in 1104, if I'm not mistaken. Or 1180, I can't remember now. 1140, I think he died, 1140. So, what period is that?
Period 5. Period 6. Rishonim.
So he's a Rishon, but he has another name. What would you call?
Yosef Netanyahu?
He has another name. What would you call Rashi? Poskim? Yes, but no. In this commentary, what would you call him? He was one of the Mefarshim, right. So in this text, you have the text of the Talmud and Mefarshim. All around it are Mefarshim. Commentaries to the Talmud. Rashi was a Mefaresh. He also gave Psak Halacha, so you wouldn't be wrong if you said he was a Posek. But his primary role, Rashi himself saw himself that way, was a commentary. He was so good at it that he made it onto the page of every Talmud until today, 900 years later. So if there was anybody to be called a commentary, the most popular, the most successful commentary in the history of Jewish tradition, it would be Rashi. Rashi was a mefaresh par excellence.
Excellence.
Yes. Keeping you awake. Did you know I spoke French?
No.
Par excellence. You're from Canada? Do you speak French?
I was in French immersion for 11 years, so I forgot all of it.
What part of France are you from?
I'm from Toronto.
I'm from Toronto too. I also took French for about 11 years. Don't know a word. Pretty bad teachers, I guess, or students. Je ne parle pas français, un petit peu, a few words here and there left, but Toronto, what part of Toronto are you from?
I grew up in North York, then I moved to East York.
I grew up in North York, but and then I moved to Israel. That'll be your story too, right?
I already made Aliyah.
All right, amazing. Okay, so Rashi is a mefaresh. There's another mefaresh on the page. If Rashi's on the inside and on this page on the right, who's on the left? Tosafot. Who are the Tosafot? Who can read it for us? Who can read it for us?
Tosafot, medieval commentary on the text of the Talmud, composed mainly in the 12th and 13th century.
What? 12th and 13th century? What years is that?
Period 6.
That's right. Right? 12th century means from 1100 to 1199. Right? 1200 to 1299 is the 13th century. So were they before or after Rashi? After Rashi. As a matter of fact, a few of them were the grandchildren of Rashi. Isn't that cool?
Yes.
But you know what's cool?
Huh?
They disagreed sometimes with their grandfather. That's okay. It's allowed. What does that mean they disagreed?
There's just another view of looking about.
That's right. They interpret the Talmud differently. One commentary explains it one way. Another commentary explains it a different way. The Tosafot is actually not one person. It's a group of scholars. Additional. Additional to who? Additional to Rashi. Rashi is the first, prime and foremost commentator. But there's additional commentaries. They even took on the name. We're the additional ones. Can you imagine making a name for your book? We're additional commentaries. They had tremendous respect for Rashi. Rashi is the primary commentary. These are additional commentaries. Where did they live?
France.
France and Germany. We're going to see. Continue reading, Stephen. Go ahead. Continue reading.
The Tosafot are not the product of a single author or school of commentators, but are rather the work of a variety of Talmudic scholars, living mainly in France, Germany, and Spain. While Rashi comments focus on the plain meaning of the text, the Tosafists tend to concentrate on analysis of difficult passages, exploring issues, contradictions, and problems raised by the text of the Gemara.
So, how does Rashi and Tosfot differ? Their commentaries? I call it, Rashi was a running commentary, explaining the flow. Like I said, adding in some words to help you understand what's going on in the text. The Tosafot sometimes are deeper analysis. It's not explaining how to read the sentences, usually. It's explaining difficult questions. Hey, this doesn't make sense. Contradictions. Rashi is very deep, of course, but the Tosafot, you see more the deeper analysis because they raise Rashi had very few discussions of difficulties. It just gives you the simple reading of the text. Yeah.
But when Rashi writes his commentaries, it was in French? It was in the language of French?
No. This is an amazing feature of the Jewish tradition. Anybody who wanted to join the conversation wrote in Hebrew. It's called Rabbinic Hebrew. It's a mixture of Aramaic, right? Because the Talmud is in Aramaic and Hebrew. It's a mixture as well. So Rabbinic Hebrew was the language shared by everybody, because we're going to see there's commentators, we'll see, from Spain. Did they write in Spanish? No, they had to speak the same language.
But in the use Ladino, can.
Yeah, but most of the Torah commentaries were in Hebrew, Rabbinic Hebrew. Yeah.
Yeah, when for example, Talmud is written in Aramaic, suddenly after that, people almost gave up Aramaic and adopted Hebrew again.
Rabbinic Hebrew is a combination. It's a mixture of Aramaic and Hebrew. So there's many phrases from Aramaic. Aramaic was the spoken language of the scholars of the Amoraim, right? So their discussions were in their native language, and Aramaic therefore became the standard language together with Hebrew. Hebrew is, I think, what enabled this conversation. We're going to see different countries. So far, we were only in Israel, Babylon. This is the Talmud Bavli. Israel, Babylon, and France. Here we have France and Germany. But we're going to see there's other countries. Other countries are coming up soon. Go ahead. And Spain as well, that's right. While Rashi's comments focus on the plain meaning of the text, the Tosfos tend to concentrate on an analysis of difficult passages. Go ahead, exploring issues, contradictions.
Contradictions and problems raised by the text of the Gemara. Often the Tosafot approach a subject using the logic and the style of inquiry of the Gemara. Occasionally, Tosafot address an interpretation or explanation offered by Rashi to examine it more thoroughly or to present an alternative approach to the subject. On the printed Talmud page, the comments of the Tosafot are set in a semi-cursive typeface known as Rashi script, and they always appear immediately adjacent to the Mishnah and the Gemara in a large block of the text position opposite Rashi commentary.
Okay, right. They call, what's interesting about the Gemara is that there's a different font, we call it today, a different font, right? In the regular block font, which we're used to in Hebrew, this is what the letter Aleph looks like. But in Rashi script, the Aleph has a different form. The printers, Christian printers, decided to use a different font, and it stuck. Until today, there are books being printed in what we call Rashi script. Rashi himself lived in 1100. He didn't use Rashi script. This is actually in the Rashi script, the font taken by the Christian printers in the 16th century actually is influenced by the Sephardi writing, Sephardic script in Spanish countries. Whatever it is, they made up a font, which was, the few differences. Some of them are very similar, obviously. Look, the Lamed, it looks like a Lamed. The Chaf looks like a Lechaf. The Yud looks like a Yud. But the Aleph is very different, and the Shin is very different. Look at the Shin. You see that?
Yeah.
Whoever doesn't have this can get a copy of it later. Until today, you need to, if you want to be a scholar of Talmud, you have to learn the font, what's called Rashi script. See, this is block letters, the regular block letters that you can all read. And on the inside and the outside, these commentaries are in Rashi script. It's a different font.
Well, what's the rationale behind
The rationale is a few. One of them was maybe technical, that the printer had only, they used to print with the metal blocks that had the letter on it, and they'd stamp the letter with ink and put it onto the paper. Now they only made so many letters of one type of script, and they made, for the same page, you need to use hundreds of letters for the inside and hundreds of letters for the outside. So this way they made different fonts. They could. That was, I think, a technical reason, but I think what it does for us is amazing. It shows us the difference between the different layers of authority, the different layers, periods of history, right? It makes a very distinctive look where the primary text looks different than the commentaries. And that's a useful technique. Today, I've seen it used, this Rashi script, as a filter to keep out the people who are not from the inside. They're not one of ours. Right? You need to be quite a scholar to read Rashi script. You need to work on it, to practice it. And so maybe somebody who's just trying to make fun or trying to look for things which are problematic in the Talmud, he doesn't really want to honestly study, maybe we want to keep him out. We don't want him to understand the texts. So it's a little bit of a filter also, I think. It's used that way sometimes. But when you study for years, I mean, I can read Rashi script just as easily as I read the block Hebrew script. The different fonts, it doesn't make a difference to me. Sometimes I don't even notice. I don't even think about it, whether it's this font or that font. Because I've been doing it my whole life. I've been reading this font. It really it's a skill that you pick up. Okay? Rashi and Tosfot, there's both Rishonim. Let's see what else we have. Now, you know what's cool? I want you to look in the margin over here. There's something written. Between the Talmud text, in the white space, between the Talmud text and Rashi, there's something written.
The Torah or?
Torah or, exactly. Can you read it, Micha?
Torah or. So it means Torah is light. Compiled by Rabbi Yehoshua Boaz in the 16th century in Italy, this index provides citations for biblical references.
Amazing. So basically it's a system of footnotes. Why Rabbi Yehoshua Boaz in the 16th century in Italy? Anybody want to guess from what I told you up till now?
It's printing center.
The printer wanted his book to be better. So he hired a rabbi. He did a great job, Rabbi Yehoshua Boaz, to put in footnotes to the text. The original Talmud never had that. Whenever the Talmud quotes a verse, you're going to have a little footnote, and you'll be able to go back to the Chumash, or the Navi, or the Tehillim. So on the page, you have also references to the Tanakh. What period is that from? What periods?
The Tanakh?
The Tanakh.
Period 1.
You have it on there? You have it on your page?
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, and 3, right?
Yes.
1, 2, and 3. We discussed why, right? Some of the Ketuvim is attributed to all the way back to the times of Moshe Rabbeinu. And some of the Nevi'im are in the first period. Yoshua, Shoftim, they're in period number 1. You can see them here. Period number 1. So the Tanakh in general will say it's periods 1, 2, and 3. The last books were in the Second Temple period. It's period 3, right? So it's amazing. This page, so far we have period 4, period 6, and in the margin we have periods 1, 2, and 3. All of Jewish history on one page. When you study Talmud, you're studying a tapestry of Jewish teachings from throughout the ages. Let's see what else we have. Let's take a look at the glosses. On the right-hand side, in the margin. A gloss is a comment written in the margin. So the printers, these are modern printers already, 18th century, 19th century. The most famous printing of the Talmud comes from the brothers Rom, who were It doesn't have it on this page. Oh, thank you so much. This over here is great. Thank you so much. Who can read for me the glosses? Glosses, Gabriel. Out loud.
Glosses. Most modern printed Talmud editions include short definitions, comments, emendations, and cross-reference from a variety of scholars active during the 17th through 19th centuries. Among the most important of these commentaries are those of Rab Eliyahu Bishlomo, the Agad,
The Gra.
the Gra or Gaon of Vilna, 18th
Century.
Lithuania, the Agahot Abba, Hebrew commentaries of the Ba of Rabbi Yoel Sirkis.
He ran away from home.
17th
Whoever got the joke got the joke. It was a joke. Go ahead. Rabbi Yoel Circus.
The comments of Rabbi Yeshayahu, Berlin, 18th century, Germany, and the Gilion Ashaf, Hebrew
Marginalia, it's in the margin, yeah.
On the six orders of the Rab Akiva Edger, 19th century Germany.
Who can count how many countries? So we have commentaries collected from which countries here? Lithuania, Poland, Germany, and 17th and 18th century. What period is that? Everybody look up here. What period? 17th and 18th century. They're Acharonim. Do you mean to tell me that on one page of the Talmud we study the entire Jewish tradition? Period 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We have scholarship from 3,500 years on one page. It's very unique, the Jewish tradition. Okay, if you look, there was one period that actually was skipped. What do we not have up till now? We had 1, 2, 3. We said Tanakh, and we had 6 and 7. Of course, 4 and 6 and 7. What about number 5, Geonim? So look at the bottom of your page, where it says other commentaries. Eitan, you read it for me. Other commentaries. Everybody see what I'm reading over here? Other commentaries. It's in the margin on the left-hand side, towards the bottom.
Other commentaries. Various other commentaries appear in the margin of the blank page of Talmud. None of these minor works cover the entire Talmud, so different tractates include different commentaries in this area. Among these are the comments of Rabbeinu Hananel, 11th century Tunisia, the Sefer HaMafteah, Book of the Key, of Rav Nissi, 11th century Tunisia, Tosafot Yeshanim, editions of the ancient, the 13th century France and Germany, the Mainz commentary, compiled by the students of Rabbeinu Gershon B. Yehuda, 11th century Germany, Tosafot Red, editions of the Red of Rabbi Yeshayahu Litrani, 13th century Italy, and the Shita Makubetze, get interpretation of Rabbi Bazael Ashkenazi, 16th century Egypt and Jerusalem.
So while we don't actually have anybody here from the period of the Geonim, we do have Rabbeinu Hananel, whose father was one of the Geonim, and Rabbeinu Gershon, where it says here 11th century. Their father, their grandparents, they were Geonim, they were periods of the Geonim. So these are the earliest commentaries we do have, but most pages of the Talmud don't have too much from the period of the Geonim. There's one other thing that we do have from the period of the Geonim. No, that's it. I don't think we have anything else. Okay, now there's one other amazing feature that we haven't looked at. There's two actually, one in the far right corner, that's also compiled by Rabbi Yeshua Boaz. That's references to not to the Bible, but to other places in Tanakh, other places in the Talmud, other similar passages elsewhere in the Talmud. What I want to show you now is on the left-hand side of your page, the top right corner. As you can see it here, every page of Talmud has this structure. It's an amazing feature where you have the text in the middle, commentaries on the sides, and in the top corner, you have a very unique work. Okay, it's called Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah, and let's read about it and understand what it does. Okay? Pinchas, you read for us, please? The top left-hand side.
Yeah.
Yes. Hebrew, well of justice, lamp of commandment. Two indices. Indices is an index. An index is reference work. Okay, compiled.
Two indices compiled by Yehoshua was in the 16th century. They provide reference to major Jewish law codes and that report authoritative ruling on points covered in the Mishnah and the Gemara. External works reference in this will include Rabbis, Torah's Sven, and Mishnah Torah. The Hebrew imitation of the laws, the Torah and Arafat, Hebrew seven table of the law, Rabbi Yosef Ephraim Karo, 16th century Israel. The Arba'a, three Hebrew four rules of Yaakov, Yashir, 14th century Spain, and the seven mitzvot Gabor, Hebrew Greek books of commandments of Moshe, Rabbi Moshe,
Ben Yaakov of Kusi, 13th century France. You know what we've been saying up till now? We have the Talmud, and what's all around it? What's the Hebrew word for all these commentaries? Mefarshim. Yechananel wants to know, there's so many mefarshim, but what do I do? You have to go. Okay. What do I do after I read all these commentaries? What do you need? What are you looking for? You're looking for the halakha. Do you see halakha? Well, it's part of the discussion. There's halakha and agadah in the Talmud, right? So there's discussions of halakha. What's the bottom line? We need a different book. What are those books called where they decide the halakha? Sifrei, Psak, halakha. Sifrei. Who are the commentaries? Who not commentaries? Who are the rabbis? What are they called? Those people who write those books of law. Poskim. Look on here. You see them over here? Pretty much on the page of Talmud, we only have commentaries. What about the poskim? They're in a separate book. What Ein Mishpat does, he links the two books. Right? Nowadays, if he had the Talmud is the Talmud, the discussions of the Talmud full of commentaries. In this book, this is a Sefer Halacha. It's called Pninei Halacha, right? Because it tells you what the decision is. From all the discussions, do X and don't do Y. And if you're Sephardi, do Y and not do X, for example, right? separate books? No, they're connected. How do we connect them? What's the connector? The reference work in the corner. Ein mishpat ner mitzvah. It connects all the mefarshim to the poskim. The poskei halacha. The poskim are the decisors. Okay, you see they're here. It's based on the Talmud. Ever since the Talmud, we have poskim giving us books of how do we take the discussions to the Talmud and make it a code of law how to practice. Okay? Without further ado, turn over your pages and do the work. 39 questions. Translate, explain, and date to the appropriate period of history. It's true. That was only 34 questions. And there's some changes, there's some additions. And not everybody got 100. I don't think there's one person who got 100. No. So you do it again. Just do it again until you get 100. Okay? So turn over the page and answer the questions, please. Right now. Then we'll do some Hilchot Pesach, hopefully.
Can you look how you write the word? Because I don't know how you write the word.
You can look as much as you want.
Yes, but then it looks like you don't know. Like.
That's right. It looks like you don't know.
It's also the 1, 2, 3. Like
Correct. Using the periods is good enough. You don't have to give me the precise date. Just the period. Periods 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7.
I'm joking. I have a question now.
Okay, only one?
Yes. Responsa, it stays here, but it says like in 5, 6, and 7. Dus you need to write 5, 6, and 7.
What do you think? What are responsa and when are they written?
Yeah, but still now you are responsa, right?
You know the answer. Eitan, we have responsa from Acharonim, like today. We have responsa from Rishonim. And we have responsa from the Geonim. Most of what we have from the Geonic period are responsa. That's why you didn't find any commentaries. They mostly wrote responsa, which are not on this page.
Is today the Zayin Adar?
Yesterday was, yeah. Today's Chet. But you don't have to go to that detail when you're writing.
Oh, no. I was just thinking.
I know. Aaron, I also tried to get a little more precise here in the history of the various empires that were dominant in those years. In addition to the
You used the word Iranians instead of Persians.
Sassanid. Yeah, I could have said Persian, but it would confuse people with ancient Persia in the second period. You understand? What's that?
I don't understand the Shulchan Aruch. It stays also in the same block. I need to say it. On 5, 6, and 7. Shulchan Aruch was like the end of the Rishonim, right?
Correct. It's at the end of that period. It's just an example.
Oh, okay.
These the Mishnah Torah and the Shulchan, I threw them in as examples. They're not. They're just examples of codes, of law codes. Who's going to get 100? That's what I want to know. The answers are all on the page, I think. So many Hebrew words.
Sedarim is new, yeah? Sedarim.
Sedarim is plural of seder. Is it new? I didn't have it last time? I see. Well, you should know it. Michael, you should know that when we make the in Hebrew, there's something called the smichut, the construct form. So when you have two words which are nouns next to each other, so you have sedarim and you have halacha. Mishnah. Sedarim and Mishnah. So we say that there are 6 sidrei Mishnah. The mem falls off.
And like Moed and...
Those are the columns. I'm just talking about the word. We say sidrei instead of sedarim. Sidrei is plural when it's in a construct form. It's orders of the Mishnah, categories of the Mishnah. Sidrei Mishnah. Shisha sidrei Mishnah is what it's called.
So Sedarim is something else.
It is. It's the same word. It's just a different form of the plural.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Mesorah, which time comes it from?
Which what?
The Mesorah. Mesorah.
I asked you.
There's always.
What's your answer?
1 to 7.
That's Aaron's answer.
Tradition, there's always a tradition. No?
I finished. Whoa.
Great. Show me. One at a time. Okay. Should I write on it? I'm going to put a pencil in case you don't want to. What?
Meet an assistant, right?
I'll explain to everybody. Good. Good. I want to discuss with everybody the changes. Aaron, you wanted to show me?
Is it wrong?
Yes. That's wrong.
The time is wrong.
That's wrong. I will discuss it with everybody.
I see.
Very good. A few corrections.
Yeah. What word?
Yes, honest mistake.
When is behind here? Which number is this?
That's my question to you. Let's discuss this. Let's discuss this together in a minute or so. I couldn't read it. I wasn't sure what it said there. That's why I circled it. I wasn't sure what. If it's 1 to 7, I think you're on the right track.
I declare from 4 to 7.
Okay, you guys continue at home. Continue afterwards. I'd like to discuss with you now. Turn the page and look at the top of the page. Look at the top of the. Why it says here the Torah, the Jewish tradition includes. You with me, guys? You with me?
Yes.
Israel, come. You can finish later. Finish for homework. Pay attention here. It says here at the top of your page, the Jewish tradition includes Torah shebichtav and Torah shebal peh. So we know, I think, when Torah shebichtav ends. Who can tell me when was the Bible closed? That's right. In period 3. That's right. The scribes, correct. Period 3. So there's an end time for the written Torah. And the beginning time of the written Torah, of course, is Sinai, right? Or maybe Abraham, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it took 3 periods to write the full Torah?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
One book written over the course of 1,500 years. That's 1,500 years, 3 periods. Looks like a little bit small on the page. But this is a very small contraction of 3,500 years of Jewish history. So we have some books of the Tanakh from the first period, In some parts, books of the Tanakh are from the 3rd period. So it's a collection of books over the course of that period, okay? What about the Torah Sheba'al Peh? All the way back. What's the end time of the Torah Sheba'al Peh?
Still now.
Absolutely. Never.
Electricity,
There's always more commentaries, more development. What's the beginning time of the Torah Sheba'al Peh? What does it say in the Torah? In the written Torah, it says, Vaidaber Hashem El Moshe Lemor, right? Hashem spoke to Moshe. Huh? Is that not oral Torah? Hashem spoke to Moshe. He told him things. Some of it got written down. But we believe that not all of it got written down. And so there was many mitzvot, many things told to Moshe, even though it wasn't written down. So that's oral Torah. Oral Torah is from the beginning of our Jewish tradition. And of course, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov spoke to God. Do you think everything was written down? Everything that God said to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? Maybe, maybe not. I tend to think not, because we find many features that are just obvious later on, which we don't have any source for. The source was oral, but not written down. Eitan, when did the oral Torah start to get written down?
In the 4.
Period 4, in the time of the sages. Good. And where was it written down?
In Jerusalem and Babylon.
Right. And which books was it written down?
Gemara, Mishnah.
What else?
Midrash.
Okay. So what's the difference between the Midrash and the Mishnah?
Actually, no difference in the end.
There is a difference. It's on your chart. It says it. Not the category. Well, the style is different. Whereas, what's the organizational structure of the teachings is different. The Midrash is organized by the Tanakh, the books of the Tanakh. And the Mishnah is organized by a new system of 6 topics. Created by who? Who created the 6 orders? Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. It's attributed to him.
But how you need to write it down, Midrash here? How you can explain this?
You could say it's oral Torah, written, organized by the books of Tanakh.
Okay.
Written on, or what does it say? It says organized by the books of the Tanakh. That's Midrash, okay? Now the next thing here, it says the Mesorah and Chidush. What's Mesorah? It says transmitted tradition. What are the periods for that? Transmitted tradition. Mesorah. One, of course, we have an unbroken tradition all the way back to the first, our forefathers. All these stories about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, how do we know them? They were passed down to us, transmitted. Transmitted tradition. What's Chidush? Tell me when the period for Chidush. Aaron just said there must be a Chidush nowadays because there's electricity. There's electronics. We never knew what the law is about electronics until there was electronics. So there must be innovation today. When did it start? When did there start to be Chidush? Innovation by the rabbis. They were inspired by God, but they innovated what the Jewish tradition says. When did that start?
4.
Nope.
1.
Yes. Did I not say, I think yesterday we talked about it, I said, Moshe Rabbeinu, our tradition tells us, he added For example, at Har Sinai, God told him to be ready for 3 days. Moshe said, I need an extra day. He added a day of his own accord. It's very interesting. As long as he doesn't say it's from Hashem, it's allowed. Well, there's always chidush. There was also innovation. Every time people take part of the tradition, they transfer it over, they transmit Mesorah, but they also have room for chidush, for innovation. Of course, not everything is permitted. You have to know how to what qualifies as kosher innovation and what's not kosher innovation. Good. What's the next page? Next line. Halacha and Agadah. Halacha and Agadah. Halacha. When does that start?
One.
And when does it end?
Seven now.
What about Agadah?
Yeah, still stories, man.
Where do you find in the Torah halacha? Mishpatim, Yitro, Tuma. There's many laws. When do you find Agadah in the Torah?
In the beginning, Bereshit.
Right, in all the stories we don't generally call it Agadah, but narrative we call it. But it's narrative sections which are not prescription. They're not telling you what to do. So we call it Agadah. So there's sections of Halacha and Agadah. What about the Talmud? It has both. What about Midrash? It has both. Most. What about Pnei Halacha? It has both. Almost all the books of the Jewish tradition encompass some Halacha and some Haggadah. Which books are mostly Halacha? Good. The codes of law. Mishneh Torah. Very good. Codes of law. They're primarily Halacha. But every other type of book includes both. Okay, what else do we have here? Emunah, Machshava, Ashkafa. They're just funny words for beliefs. Kabbalah, this is ethics, Musar. Yafeh me'od. Questions, comments? Let's quickly open up our books on laws of Pesach. Whoever didn't finish it, then show me tomorrow. Tomorrow morning I want to see this completed by everybody except for Aaron and Eitan. I want you to fix what you needed fixing there. I did it already, but you have to show me tomorrow morning. Okay? Jordan, you're going to be here tomorrow?
Yes, I will.
Oh, perfect. So you can do your homework. Awesome. All right. Let's open up Pnei Halacha laws of Pesach. We have a few minutes. Let's try to throw in some laws. You know, how many pages are in this book? About 270 pages of halacha. That means, and we've been studying already many classes on the laws of, you know what people like to talk about the most? Chapter 9. You'd think that the chapter 9 was the center of the most important chapter. It's not. It's a very interesting halacha, but people talk about it a lot. Chapter 9 is on page 109. It's a custom of the Ashkenazim, Jews who lived in Europe, Germany. Ashkenaz means Germany, but it's spread to other countries near Germany, to Poland, Lithuania.
So Ashkenazi translates to German?
Exactly. That's what the word means.
And
They used to call Germany Ashkenaz.
And it's Yiddish?
It's Hebrew. Ashkenaz is Hebrew.
You find it in the tables of nations, right?
That's right. It's one of the names of the children of the generations of after Noah. The children of Noah. One of them is called Ashkenaz.
Now, the word German is used less because of Holocaust or because of what?
The word Ashkenaz
Like
got changed into the word Germany. I don't know when. Until today, people, if maybe if they're doing rabbinic writing, we talk about Ashkenazim, so we still use it. We can say the Jews from Germany, Yehudim Germania, or we can say Yehudim Ashkenazim. Ashkenazim is a wider term now. It's not only Germany; it's the countries next to it. So maybe that's why nowadays we use it a little differently. The specific country would be Germany, and the Ashkenazi would be the group of communities that follow the same customs.
Is the city Ashkelon named after Germany?
No. It starts the same, but it ends different. The Zion is different. And the Nun is different, right?
Yeah.
It's like Sephardim, because Sephardim
Absolutely.
were the Jews in Spain. And
Sfard means Spain, but now it's North African Jews and Jews from Persia. They're also considered Sfaradim. All the Eastern countries, Edot HaMizrach, is a more precise terminology than Sfaradim. But sometimes people say Sfaradim instead of Edot HaMizrach, the communities from the east. And anyways, Kitniot, everybody agrees that it's not a biblical law. We've been studying that you're not allowed to have chametz, right? We haven't even touched upon the positive commandments of Pesach. We will get to that after Purim. Bezrat Hashem, very soon we're going to get to the positive commandments. There's so much to talk about Pesach. You have to get rid of all the chametz. We talked about bitul chametz, bidikat chametz, biur chametz. What is chametz? A little bit of chametz mixed in. Is it nullified or not? Maybe before Pesach it's nullified. Afterwards it's not, right? We talked about that. There's so much to talk about. This law of kitniot, I think is talked about more than ever because we live in an age of kibbutz galuyot. What does that mean? Kibbutz galuyot.
It's like gathering.
In gathering of the exiles. In gathering of the exiles. We live in Israel. You was sitting in Beit Knesset, sitting in Machon Meir. Somebody that came, whose parents came from Ashkenazi countries. And right next to him, somebody who came from the Sephardi countries. We have marriages, intermarriage. Jews who came from Europe and Jews who came from Eastern countries. They're in the same family. Each one wants to keep their traditions. What do? Jews were scattered for so many years. And I think that's why this topic, chapter 9, people discuss it so much. It's because we live in an age where we're all together. Before that, it was obvious. If you're Ashkenazi, you follow the Ashkenazi traditions. If you live in Spain, if you live in Portugal, if you live in North Africa, Morocco, of course, everybody does the same thing. There's nothing to discuss. But now we're all together. When I go shopping, the Jews in Israel go shopping. Let's say something's kosher only for Sfaradim, but it's not kosher for Ashkenazi Jew. What a headache. Many times I go shopping, I'm Ashkenazi, try to keep up the traditions of my family, and I go to the supermarket, and I'm looking for products for Pesach, and I say, it says kosher the Pesach, but not for me. It says kosher the Pesach, but not for me. I have to go to another supermarket, which maybe caters more to Ashkenazim. How many Sfaradim and Ashkenazim are there today in Israel?
Maybe half-half? No.
About half-half, maybe.
I
What do you
thought
think?
Ashkenazi outnumbered Sephardim by a lot.
I think you are right outside of the land of Israel. In North America, by far more Ashkenazi. But in Israel, we are so blessed to have an influx of ingathering of the exiles from many, many Eastern countries. From all the Arab countries. They were kicked out. They would have been killed. from Yemen and from Morocco and Tunis and Iraq and Iran and so many countries. So we actually have, in Israel, I believe it's a majority of Sfaradim.
They all came here, right? You cannot.
There's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, but Ashkenazim, they could stay in Canada.
That's right. Many Ashkenazim stay. The two major centers today of the Jewish people is Israel and North America, Israel and the United States. There's a big concentration in England, a big concentration in Canada, some concentration in South Africa, but mostly the two major centers with millions and millions and millions of Jews are Israel and North America and United States.
And Europe, like Prague and stuff, there's not so much Jews there anymore, right?
It's too scattered.
Anybody know why?
It's too much nonsense.
Why? That's it, because Hitler killed them all. So of course they ran away. Used to be the center of Judaism was in European countries, and for the last few hundred years it was Russia. The most of the Jews lived in Russia. Russian Jews were persecuted. They moved on. There's a lot of Jewish history. We can't describe it all in one short paragraph. But the topic nowadays, so you're right, Jordan. I think in America, people are not so aware of the Sephardic communities. And most kashrut organizations in America, when they write kasher l'Pesach on it, it'll be kosher for Ashkenazim, because that's the biggest populace. In Israel, you have to check. What's the big difference between Sephardim and Ashkenazim? It's all based on the Talmud. We all have the same halacha, the same Jewish tradition.
The kitchen is different.
No. 90% is the same. 95% is the same. There is one custom regarding the laws of Pesach which makes a big difference in your kitchen. And that's why people think there's such a major difference. It's just one question, but it's a big question about what you eat on Pesach. Do you eat kitniot or do you not eat kitniot? Let's start. We have a few minutes. We'll start today. We're going to continue the discussion tomorrow. The chametz, I'm reading on page 109. Chametz prohibited by the Torah is produced from one of the 5 types of grains, and only the 5 types of grain: wheat, barley, spelt, oats, and rye. Other species, such as rice and millet, even if they rise, do not undergo the same fermentation process as the 5 cereal grains, and they may be eaten on Pesach. Although one Tana, what's a Tana?
From the time of the Mishnah.
A sage from the time of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, maintains that rice is also a cereal grain and forbidden by the Torah in its leavened state. The rest of the sages maintain that even if rice rises, it may be eaten on Pesach. This was the practice of all the great Tanaim and Amoraim. In fact, Rava ate rice at the Seder during the medieval era of the Rishonim. Who tells me what are the years of the Rishonim? Exactly. The Jews of Ashkenaz, Germany, especially the Rhineland, began to refrain from eating kitniot on Pesach. We don't translate kitniot because it's most people say legumes, but we're going to see what exactly they are, and it's a family of foods. Initially, only some communities observed this stringency, but within a few generations, the custom had spread to all Ashkenazi communities. Why? Everybody knows it's not chametz. Even Ashkenazim agree, kitniot are not chametz. So why not eat them? We don't know. Jewish history is funny. The custom started, people in Ashkenaz, in Europe, said we don't eat rice. That's a good example. There's others. But we don't eat rice on Pesach. Why not? Rice says in the Talmud you could eat rice on Pesach. Why not? We're not sure why. Afterwards, after the custom became more and more popular, the rabbis said, what's going on here? Why are people doing this? So they came up with 3 reasons why this custom might have started. Take a look on page 110. 3 principal reasons for this custom have been offered. A, since kitnios are cooked in the same manner as grains in a pot, there's concern that if people cook rice on Pesach, they'll end up mistakenly cooking forbidden types of grains. You put in some rice, maybe you'll put in some wheat, maybe you'll put in some barley. B, since kitnios, like cereal grains, are often made into flour. If the unlearned masses see pious Jews cooking and baking foods with kitnia flour without concern for it becoming chametz, they're liable to do the same with grain flour as well. You can make flour from rice flour. So maybe we should forbid rice because people are going to see you cooking with flour, baking with flour, and they'll think you have wheat flour or barley flour. That's B. And look at C. Skip a few lines. C is grain and kitniot kernels are similar in appearance and are kept in the same storehouses for relatively long periods. It is therefore eminently possible that wheat or barley kernels would find their way into kitniot. When the kitniot are cooked, the grain will become chametz. This concern persists today. And indeed, it is possible to find kernels of grain when checking kitniot. I've seen it myself. You buy a bag of rice at the store. If you go through it very carefully, in the middle of the rice, there'll be one wheat berry or one little piece of barley. If you cook up that rice on Pesach, you're making chametz. It's a problem. So, you know why that happens? 2 reasons it happens. Storage is one reason. In other words, you have a big silo and you fill it with wheat, and then you sell all the wheat and you take it to be ground up into flour. So you clean it out, but you don't clean it so well. There's a few pieces of grain, of wheat still left on the floor. And then you get a shipment of rice. So you put the rice into the silo, the same silo. It happens in silos, it happens in trucks. You know, how do they transport grains from China to North America? Containers. Sometimes they use sacks, and sometimes they use the same sacks for the grains and for rice, but sometimes they just pour it into the container. Hopefully they clean the container out in between, but sometimes there's a little kernel in the corner of the container. What do I care? 99.9% of it is rice. If you're keeping halacha, you care. One kernel of wheat could be chametz. So these are the 3 reasons given. And the last one makes the most sense.
Or the farmland, sometimes this year you grow this.
Correct. That's right. We're going to speak about oats. We're going to speak about that we get to matzah. But there is contamination in the field itself. You can have a field of one type of millet, for example, or another type of plant, which is not one of the 5 grains. But last year's crop was wheat or barley. And so there's some wheat stocks still there. So when you harvest it all together. So you got the mixture. It's very hard to keep things from being contaminated in the modern, and in ancient times, and even in modern times. It's hard to keep them. So that's the most, I think, compelling reason for the Ashkenazi custom. The bottom line is we keep our customs. We have to discuss it in greater detail tomorrow, how we put this into practice. And what do we do if we have limitations on our diets? In other ways, what are we going to eat? If we don't eat rice, what are we going to eat?
Potatoes.
A lot of potatoes. We'll discuss it tomorrow. Continue tomorrow. B'ezrat Hashem. Have a good day. Okay.